Here we go. 3 zombies on my freeze pulsar versus Brutus.
Sure.
It's without any minion nodes, too, right?
He hasn't even killed a zombie
Obviously.
yet.
Oh my god,
He
they're
just
red.
died. The zombies are still alive.
They just wrecked him. Now imagine you had 12 zombies. And pretty much, they all attack once and dead. With 12.
Merciless.
How you go to Vol?
And you're missing, what, 100% damage from the passive
Not
tree?
good at all.
I don't have minion nodes. I don't have a single minion node. This is my freeze
That's what I'm
pulsar.
saying.
So the Brutus kill should show you guys a pretty good example of what's possible with minions. In the Brutus kill, I was using damage-wise for the zombies, minion damage, which really is nothing because I don't have any minion passives. It's something you can overcome with the minion passives. I was also using added fire to act as a physical multiplier, and I was using remote mine, which does work on the zombies. It increases all the damage that they do by another multiplier. Now, why was I doing this? Well, I was testing out the summoner build, and something I've tried a little bit before. I've kind of ran the numbers, didn't like it so much. Pretty much because in Path of Exile, playing a summoner is pretty much the most boring thing you can do. I mean, the minions do all the killing, and the killing doesn't happen very quickly at all, as I've seen in the past. But, meeting a few people in the game and testing some things out myself, I've come to the realization that there is some potential there for a real build, and as such, this is what I ended up doing in the weak race. Now, I'm not going to talk about the weak race character yet, because it is something that's kind of like a work in progress, and although I have a pretty good idea about what I want to do with it, it's not final. I don't want to give you guys any bad advice on the subject. But, in regards to the summoner topic, there is some pretty cool stuff that I want to talk to you guys about and show you guys how I came to a build like this. This is typically what I like to do with builds, how I start from the beginning to the end, and give you guys a pretty good idea about what I'm doing, and maybe you can use that towards your own adventure builds and all the good stuff in Path of Exile. So it came from the fact that I realized that most summoners in the game pretty much are very cookie cutter. It's just minions do damage, you use arc, and it's just very, very, very boring. So the other side was that in general, fire damage is very good if you do a large amount of damage over one hit. And with this in mind, the zombies do that. The zombies and other minions, when they die, you can trigger minion stability by getting the passive keystone, which is pretty readily available on the skill tree. It's in a fairly good position, right beside static blows, for instance. But although I don't use static blows in my build, the idea is that you can magnify this ability, the strength of this ability, through your minions by using support gems with them. And this is something that most people haven't done before. While you can use stuff like minion damage or minion life that would then up the damage of it, it doesn't amplify it significantly enough. And on top of that, what I wanted to do is I wanted to incorporate gems that would benefit both sides. So I wanted the minion stability aspect, the damage of the minions to be improved by a lot, as well as their functionality in the general case. So I realized that what I could do is I could use added fire to multiply their melee damage, use chance to ignite, so when they hit with fire damage it has a chance to do a burn, and proliferate, which would then make the burn a radius, so all the zombies essentially melee for fire damage. This has the second consequence of when they die and trigger minion instability, that minion instability is also affected by the chance to ignite gem and the proliferation gem once the ignite occurs. So when they explode, they affect a much larger area for essentially more damage because they weren't going to burn to begin with. Burns in Path of Exile are 4/3 of the damage that was initially taken by the hit. So in my case, I'm more than doubling the minion stability damage through the burn and increasing its radius. For 2 gems, that is really, really good value. On the other side, I kind kind of want it to be a very good support character, and so far in the week race, while only a day has passed, that part is pulling through pretty well. I wanted to use, permanent curse, dual curse, use an extra item, triple curse. I wanted to use elemental equilibrium, because the other side, the flip side of the summoner build, is that the minions have their own attributes, they have their own triggers. So when you get a passive like elemental equilibrium, when you do damage, the monsters become more resistant to that damage, but much less resistant to the other types of damage. Your minions don't trigger that, but your player can trigger that. So you can, suffer a damage loss as the player, but have a huge damage bonus for your minion. And I wanted to incorporate this. I thought the best idea was to use Ice Nova, because it covers such a large radius, and I could just leave it level 1. So what I ended up doing is I use Ice Nova as low level as possible, and it does like no cold damage, and pretty much don't have any people in our group that use cold damage. So I can use that and stack flammability with elemental weakness with temp chains, and if I do that, they have minus 50 fire from elemental equilibrium, in the end minus 60 from elemental weakness, minus 50 from flammability. So they have minus 160 fire resistance from 2 of the curses and the equilibrium effect. And on top of that, they will have temp chains, and temp chains makes it so the debuffs that the target has expire at half the rate. So what that means is the ignite will be up there twice as long. So the ignite, instead of doing 4/3 of the original damage, will do 8/3, because it's there for twice the original duration, on top of the fact that the monsters are significantly fire debuffed. So I took these ideas and I made a build around it. I wanted elemental equilibrium, I wanted minion instability, I wanted dual curse, all that stuff is on the top side of the tree, and I wanted to go to be somewhat tanky. So I ended up going with Eldritch Battery, Iron Reflex, and it was quite a challenge to get enough life. But in the end, I kind of made it work. I went from the idea of what I wanted to do with the skills to the idea of the passive tree, and tweaking it so it's more or less viable, so it has enough life to not die to just random bullshit you see on the screen. And in the end, you give it a run, you give it some practice in a somewhat serious environment. I really like to experiment with builds in the week races, because there's the added incentive for them to be successful, while at the same time it's still experimental. And this is a stage where we're at, and if all things go well, I'll show you guys what I ended up doing exactly, and maybe the summoner thing will not be so crappy after all. Hope you guys enjoyed my little story about my build, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.